And there it is, the finished Legio Astorum Warp Runners Warlord Titan. So there it is, just about finished. It's actually about 99.9% finished. There's just a few details that I have to do on the weapons, like painting the cables and maybe getting some black inside of these inside of the gun barrels, but basically it's done. If you've been watching the Instagram feed and the Facebook page, around about the time that I am filming this video, which is late November, early December 2018, there was some sort of action photos of this on the table at Warhammer World, so very proud to see that, and I shared that on the Instagram, and which is TPS Painting Studio, and also on the Facebook page, which is Tiny Plastic Spaceman. Just search for that on Facebook. There's also detailed photos that you can see on there, but very happy with it. So is the owner, which is not me, but he's quite proud of it as well. Certainly the centerpiece of the owner's collection. So this is the setup that I call the Great Unfriender setup. You got the triple turbo blasters, or whatever these are called here, and then you've got the Bellicosa volcano cannons, yeah, not the friendliest setup to do, but I've got also the missile launchers, which are here, the Carapace launchers. And I've got the arm with the Auroch Power Claw, which I think we should be able to show how these pop in. I used a couple pairs of two pairs of magnets, 8x3mm, you can see there, and there's matching magnets inside the elbow, and each weapon has they're fitted with those same sorts of things. Fit it in there. I've also got the Sun Fury Plasma Annihilator, which is this big boy. And that fits on the other side. So this one's meant to fit just on the right side, because obviously we have a left arm, so it's pretty swappable. It's quite a versatile arrangement of weapons. So I'm just going to take this off, and I'm going to set this on the table and get some start getting some sort of, I guess, beauty shots, I suppose. So if you can remember, we cut the base in an oval shape. Decided not to do anything on the edges as far as beveling or anything like that, and kept it relatively simple. I mean, it's basically a flat base with some stuff piled up on top of it. So it's the feet are basically perfectly flat on the base and screwed up through the middle of the legs. There's big wood screws. And then you can see the paint scheme is basically this, the red fading into yellow, so it's like basically the sky to sunset, and then a light blue fading up into a darker blue. And that theme sort of follows throughout the rest of the model. Even on the armor pieces, you can see here on the big guns on the side, you see the dark blue at the top, light blue at the bottom. And then the leg pieces, or sorry, the shoulder supports, so yeah, I mean, even these pieces at the very top, they have just the tiniest bit of light blue at the bottom. So, and then at the top, if you're familiar with anything like Milky Way photography or astrophotography, I guess you can call it. There's some nebulas that you can see, and then the Legio Astorum Forge World transfers are on the top there. You can see so the constellations, The nebulas continue around the side with the constellations there, and there's a bit of star field that you can see. And then at the back, it's just a plain, very, very dark blue, almost a purple. And then the star field and constellations continue up to the top. And then there's the void shield generators. Decided to add a little extra detail around the edges of the grills at the top around the reactor engine vents or whatever they are. And if we turn it again to see the other side, you can see more of the nebula on the front to the front and the sidemost armor plate, and then at the back again it's just the very, very dark blue. So you can see I've done the lenses and stuff like that. I think it really helps finish off the model. The inside of the head is also painted, and the princeps will get painted separately as well. A little bit more detail on him. Now around the back you can see that the yellow and the red and some of the panels are blue at the back. But you see the theme carries around. There's lots of brass details that have been picked out just to sort of add to the level of extra detail that this model kind of deserves. All the bolts, the hex bolts and things like that are painted in bronze, and then very light dry brush. Some other little bits are picked out in silver, as you can see. That's the rear entry hatch, and there's the some of the symbols and the lenses are picked out there as well. There's the reactor vents and the void shields. They're not magnetized. There wasn't really any point, because in the game it's got 6 void shields and there's 8 void shield markers sort of at the top. So just a careful dry brushing of blue and slowly faded to very light blue with dry brushing. So that's what the other this side-on shot gives a better view of what the fade looks like. I can actually see it with my bare eyes, but the camera picks up the gradient a lot better in the light that I've got. But looks, I mean, think it looks pretty good with the light blue at the bottom fading to the dark blue, and then the same on the armor panel there, the shoulder piece, and then the head. You can just see a bare hint of the light blue at the bottom of the chin of the head. So those side armor pieces that you can see against the skeleton of the body behind the arm, those got the same treatment, and you can see just a bit of the light blue at the bottom of that armor piece there. So you can see, now when I say 99.9% complete, you can see the weapons need their some of the cables painted and some washes on the weapons, but overall, you know, it's the body at least is ready to go home. And here's the big boy with the alternate weapons loadout. With the Auroch Power Claw and the Sun Fury Annihilator, and the big missile launchers on top. Now the missile launchers, those are the most glaringly obvious that they're not finished, because those are going to get white missiles. The heads come separately on a bunch of sprues, so I'm going to paint those on the sprue and then basically just glue them in separately. The plasma annihilator has a few cables, well actually lots of cables to get finished, and pretty sure the claw is pretty much done, except for maybe a bit of spotting around where the bullets would be fired from, because it is a big gun. And of course the washes need to be done again on all of these weapons as well. So there's the Sun Fury Plasma Annihilator. All the metals are pretty much done, just some soot marks around some of the vent openings, and again the hoses at the back. All those cables, those massive cables there. But other than that, and the washes, general washes that need to be done, that is pretty much finished. Now the carapace weapons that are on top, they have the Legiostorum, the Constellation transfers, the Forge World transfers. Those are meant to face on the outside, to match the outside, rather than the inside of the weapons. So the right side weapon up top has the Constellation on its right side, and vice versa for the left side. So it's just a nice touch to sort of bring that side of the Titan together visually. And just the other side of the Annihilator plasma cannon. I wasn't really convinced by doing the brass or gold on the coils. To me, it kind of ought to be, the plasma sort of color, the blue and light blue OSL, object source lighting sort of look. But I think it works. Certainly makes it look different. Note the axe transfer on the middle finger there. Just in case, it's a nice little funny touch. The other thing, just want to show the transfers on this side of the rocket pods, and how that ties in. There's a lot of reflection in my little room here, but hopefully that comes across. Okay, so now to the nitty-gritty. Just details on the paints and whatever that I used. I hesitate to say techniques, but I suppose just to stave off too many questions in the comments, which I'm happy to answer. But basically, painted all of the armor panels separately, every single one. They all are assembled just separately and on their own, and then glued in place afterwards. So I painted the skeleton. Basically I used the Citadel lead belcher, but the Wilko's, if you're in the UK, Wilko's silver metallic spray paint works really well, and it's a pretty close match to lead belcher, I'll be honest with you. I did prime it with black first, and then put the lead belcher on, and then use, I think it was Plasticoat silver. It was a very bright silver, and did that on sort of as a zenithal coating, basically. So that went on top of everything, and then I painted stuff like the pistons and all the details around the pistons, like those brass pieces. The pistons were painted with Vallejo silver, just as a very bright, it's what hydraulic pistons would be, the color that they would be. The armor panels were all primed with Badger Stynol res. I used a mixture of the black and the silver primer, basically 2/3 silver and 1/3 black, and got a nice dark silver. and use that, a very, very dark silver. That is the back of every single armor panel. And then on the lower legs and where there's the bright blue, I use the normal silver Stano-Res Badger primer on that, and that is through an airbrush. And then I use Badger Ghost Tints. I use Midnight Blue and Blue. So obviously the Midnight Blue is the very, very dark blue. I use the red and the yellow for the lower legs. And then after some trial and error, on top of the ghost tints, basically you have to lacquer those with lacquer, not acrylic, clear coat or varnish. So at first I think it was Hakata, but then I settled on Mr. Hobby because it's much easier to get for me. And then just make sure it's a lacquer primer. I suppose you can use a car lacquer, clear coat, but just make sure it's clear. Use gloss at first, and then top that with satin, so that I would have just on the armor pieces, on the edges of the armor pieces where the trim is, that silver trim. And then gave that a wash with thin down oil paints from Ammo by MIG. And that is basically it. Then after that, it was basically a dry brush of the silver, Vallejo silver, on top of everything to clean up the washes and take care of that. The lenses were all done with various P3 paints, just a dark blue to a light blue, dark red to a light red, and a dark green to a light green. I don't remember the colors. It doesn't really matter. It's just, as long as I did do some wet blending on that. It's not very difficult because it's a very small area. And then a nice coat of gloss just really ties it together, makes it look nice and deep. The base is done basically with lots of PVA glue and gravel, and that's a Necromunda bulkhead door. There's some I think that's a Tamiya gas tank that's there. That's a GW barrel, and then there's Forge World, the actual really old, hard to find barbed wire, the photo etch barbed wire. So that's why it looks pretty good. And basically just built up. I did use some filler, just some cheap wall filler. I made a crater in the back there that's mainly so that whoever's using this in game can have a nice flat area for the dice to lay. And then just various bits from my bits boxes, some tubing, and there's this weird, I think it's an old Necromunda bulkhead piece that was cut out. There's some wooden duck boards that are in there somewhere. There's bits of other things, but nothing too obvious. I mean, for me, having it stepping on a Land Raider or a Sakaran tank or a massive tank, I think it's just, it looks cool, but when it's done right, but I think it's a bit overdone, I have to say. And then let's see, before I actually glued everything in place with the armor pieces, I went with an airbrush with the primer black, and just in all of the recesses, like on the tops of the legs here, around where I knew the armor pieces would be, I just put some extra metallic, very, very dark metallic primer on those, just to really highlight the contrasts. And then just went over everything with a couple of coats of a medium silver and then a bright silver on once the armor panels were in place. Just put those on the layers of dry brush to help just accentuate the contrast, basically. And then I already explained about the void shields. I think they came out really, really well. So I'm just going to pop the head off. It's the first time you're going to see my hand in one of these bits. But basically the head's held in place with 3 magnets, just 6mm magnets. And the top comes off. And that way you can see inside. I painted a few little bits of detail in there. Just, you know, helps it look a little bit extra cool rather than just gluing it all in place. And there you can see the Maserati. The princeps will sit right there in the middle where I've made the cross hatches, because he's going to be glued in place. So I painted the bolts and some of the metal straps and stuff like that. You can see the Maserati stations are painted up as well, and that piece comes off also. And you can see their station is ready for battle. You see those messages on the big screen there. So you kind of just make that up as you go along. There's nothing, you know, no one says that has to be green. It can be blue, it can be red, or whatever color you want, really. So basically the Maserati, we're going to get a little bit extra detail in the princeps as well, but you know, for game purposes, it's more than ready. And those are just held in place with magnets, so that kind of just pops right back in place without too much effort, he says, holding the camera one-handed. There we go. And then that will pop on. There we go. And then, so if you really want, you can swap the heads. You can make it movable, you can glue it in place, but I think it's a little bit cooler to be able to just pop it off and just show your opponents, oh, you know, there's my princeps right there, and this is his name and whatever. So there's some of the option weapons laid out, and just the alternate weapons configuration. I haven't actually seen it armed like that before. So I'm going to leave it here, because what better way to finish off the Warlord Titan view. Hopefully you have enjoyed this little walkthrough. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments or on the Facebook page at Tiny Plastic Spacemen on Facebook, or tinyplasticspacemen.com on the webs, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. And check us out on Instagram, TPS Painting Studio. So that is it from me. Thanks for checking out the video, and keep on painting. Thanks. Bye.